but there are surfaces in your office place that harbor biofilm. And one of those surfaces is also a tabletop or desktop in your office. Imagine just getting the new sauce from McDonald's, and it's the McNugget sauce, and some of that spills onto your desk at lunchtime.
Maybe you don't notice it. You know, you're busy, you're working, you're doing 2, 3, 4, 5 things at once.
Sure. Or maybe you do notice it and even wipe it up with a napkin and you think you get it all, but there's a thin layer that's left. That's
biofilm.
It's everywhere. And it's hard to spot that thin layer. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Cleaning Indy Podcast, brought to you by American Facility Care. I'm your host, Tom Moore, and this is our other host, Sarah Moore, and we like to talk about all things facility and building related. Are you a facilities director or property manager, or even the point person in charge of your building? If so, then this podcast is for you. Well, how's everyone's day going? I hope it's going pretty well. This past week, I was at a restaurant in Indy, on the south side of Indy. And you know what? We'll give the name because it was a good experience. It was a good pizza place. You probably know what I'm talking about. South side of Indy.
Favorite pizza place?
Your favorite pizza place?
My favorite. Brozini's?
Brozini's. Okay.
I love
shout them out.
Brozini's.
They did a good job here.
So
it was at the lunch hour, which is the busiest time of the day, as you know. And one of the employees brought out a mop bucket and started dipping their mop into it and saturating the floor, while another one quickly followed behind them and was squeegeeing it to a floor drain.
And why were they doing that?
Well, that's a good question. I think for two reasons. Obviously, number one, for sanitation, and then number two, safety. They wanted to make sure they didn't have an environment where other employees were slipping on the floor. So I think they did it right. I give them 2 thumbs up for what they did.
Brozini's wins again. They're awesome.
They are. We're going to talk about the impact cleaning has on employee productivity and morale. So sadly, on the other hand, I have another story of a few years ago at another restaurant. You can notice the themes here. I like to visit and frequent restaurants. This was a sandwich shop in Avon. We're not gonna necessarily give the name of it, but as I went in, as we like to often do as cleaning business owners, just kind of look around and I see some things on the floor. It's a blanket of crumbs, and I thought to myself, because I had been craving this particular sandwich shop and I had recently been there and I thought I had seen those there before. So I took a picture and I thought, I'll just make another visit for lunch later this week and just see if they happen to be in the same place or if they're removed or not. So a couple days later, I visited that sandwich shop and compared to my picture to what I saw there in person. And sure enough, those crumbs were in the exact same position.
Gross.
And these crumbs were something that every customer and employee that walks through the front door would have to notice as they enter. And so this has an effect on employee morale. And so with regular, consistent, professional cleaning, your workers will have a positive experience in 3 different ways. We're going to talk about 3 ways right now. Number 1 is it establishes better health and hygiene.
Yeah, I know with 2020 and all the things going on then, it is so important now that we make sure our employees, our clients, our friends, anyone coming to our place of business is safe. They know they're coming to a hygienic place, a place where it's been properly sanitized and cleaned. Nobody should have to worry about getting sick at work because it's not getting cleaned properly.
Well, you bring up getting sick at work, and there is a well-known culprit for this. And I want to talk to you, Sarah, right now about biofilm.
Okay.
According to the National Institute of Health, the definition of biofilm is, get ready for this, an assemblage of microbial cells that is irreversibly associated with a surface and enclosed in a matrix of primarily polysaccharide material. It's not easily removed by just rinsing.
So in layman's terms, it's a film made up of organic substance that has decayed into a layer of sticky germs, which is gross.
Sounds pretty gross.
Pretty gross, yeah.
And we've probably, and if you're a parent out there or you have parents, you might have come across that in your day-to-day life as well.
I think as a parent, everything is sticky is probably like a phrase you've probably said many times. I know I've said it as a mom, like, why is my lipstick case sticky? I haven't even eaten anything, but kids are very sticky little things. And our daughter, I know just recently is trying to make her own food, and she tried to make a honey and peanut butter sandwich. And I asked her to clean it up. And when I came in, I put my hand out on the table just so innocently and naively. And when I lifted it, it was covered in sticky honey. She had just tried to wipe it with a little dish towel and left the entire table covered in honey.
Well, that is one surface in your house, but there are surfaces in your office place that harbor biofilm. And one of those surfaces is also a tabletop or desktop in your office. Mm-hmm. Imagine just getting the new sauce from McDonald's, and it's the McNugget sauce, and some of that spills onto your desk at lunchtime.
Maybe you don't notice it. You know, you're busy, you're working, you're doing 2, 3, 4, 5 things at once.
Sure. Or maybe you do notice it and even wipe it up with a napkin and you think you get it all, but there's a thin layer that's left. That's
biofilm.
It's everywhere. And it's hard to spot that thin layer. And so maybe you are in a hurry and you run home. You meant to wipe it with a wet wipe or something, disinfectant wipe. You get home the next day, maybe you get to work. Maybe your boss checks in, your manager, and they put their hand down right where that stickiness was, and they look at their hand, and sure enough, they see and feel what that biofilm was all about. That's going to affect the employee morale in your building. It's going to affect the morale of your boss.
That's an awkward moment with the boss for sure.
There are other ways that it could happen as well on your desktop as well. Another common thing is you bump your coffee and then it just overflows and puts a little coffee ring, and then that just attracts dirt, bacteria, and then left unclean, that can also create a sticky situation with some germs. Another area is your keyboard, your computer mouse, or trackpad. And imagine this. Let's say you do go in the next day and you sense it yourself. Maybe your boss hasn't been in yet, and you know you need to get rid of it, and it's on your hand. So where are you going to get rid of it at?
Probably the bathroom.
Probably the restroom. Okay, so let's just run through this real quickly. You open your the handle on your door, and so that's surface number one. Maybe on the way to the restroom, you put your hand on a partition of your coworker.
Yeah, someone asks you a question or something and you get distracted.
All right, that's surface number 2. And then on the way to the bathroom, you're thirsty.
By this time, you've forgotten why you're going to the bathroom. You just know you're going there.
Yeah, you're just going. You're thirsty. You just touch the drinking fountain handle. And then you touch the handle to the bathroom. Then maybe you touch the flusher handle and then the faucet handle. How many surfaces is that? That's like 6 different surfaces that you've unknowingly touched in spreading the biofilm to other surfaces. All right, so that's how it happens. According to the National Institute of Health, there are 2 ways and specific chemicals that are great to be used against biofilm.
Yeah, there's sodium hypochlorite, which is bleach, and hydrogen peroxide cleaners. I know our company we try to stay away from the bleach just because
it's not our favorite.
It's not our favorite. I mean, it can be used sometimes for like really stubborn things. But
it works well.
It works well, but it is a little bit, it's strong.
It's harsh to people's
It can get on
senses.
carpet. The smell is harsh. It could easily spill, get on carpet and ruin it, get on clothing and ruin it. So it's not our favorite, but hydrogen peroxide we've found is really effective. And
there's a chemical that we use, and it's clean by proxy, and that's a hydrogen peroxide based cleaner. It's really a multi-purpose cleaner, but it also is a disinfectant. It works well against COVID, other viruses, and according to the National Institute of Health, it is the best way to remove biofilm. And that is what we use in each of our buildings. We highly recommend you get some good proxy cleaner, whether it's at home or at your office as well. And there's 2 ways to remove it. 2 really good things that you got to do. You need to spray and soak, the 2 S's, spray and soak. It's not spray and pray that it goes away. You got to spray it, let it soak and dwell the appropriate time. Every chemical bottle is going to have a dwell time on the back. It's going to need to stay on that surface. It's going to need to stay wet until that dwell time is up. And then you know that it has killed everything that it claims that it's going to kill. And then there's a really good way of removing it.
Well, we have microfiber cloths, and they create surface friction, which transfers the biofilm suspended in the cleaning solution to the microfibers in the cloth. It takes more than 1 wipe, though.
More than 1 wipe? You can't just gently wipe it and it goes away?
To remove biofilm, you need more than 1 wipe. And I imagine my daughter, our 8-year-old, who I'm sure thought she cleaned the table,
she wiped it.
Taking a dish rag and just gently wiping it 1 time and then walking away. But you've got to wipe it several times, 2, 3, sometimes 4, depending on how stubborn that guy is. And then we train our cleaners to use a gloved hand and fill the surface of the table, making sure that there is no sticky substance left behind.
All right. So what are some other ways that cleaning can impact positively employee morale? Well, it can also, number 2, boost employee productivity. According to the ISSA, sick days, unplanned absences cause a 54% decrease in productivity and output. And there's a big culprit for this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just in there, the productivity, that's the bottom line. That's what you're there for, to make money, to grow, to have a productive business. So that's big.
But also, like, if you aren't there, the workload usually gets spread around on on your coworkers.
Yeah.
And if there's a lot of coworkers sick, productivity really takes a dive.
Yeah.
So there's really a pretty big culprit that's well known to create sick days in office environments.
Yeah, and that's dust. Dust creates breathing problems and respiratory problems. And, dust is something, we've kind of discussed this, but it's something that when you're a cleaning company owner, you tend to notice the cleaning whenever you go into other companies. And so when I go into restaurants, that's something that I notice a lot of is dust. The HVAC units that hang above the tables, a lot of times, those are just coated in dust. And it's so hard for me at the table because, the air's on, air conditioning's blowing, heat's blowing, and it's blowing that dust and it's all coming down into your food. And so dust is a real culprit of a lot of sicknesses and allergies and things that people struggle with. I know I personally struggle with dust. Mm-hmm. So I know there's a lot of people out there that really makes sick.
And let's give a shout out real quickly to the employees. And you know who you are. You've got your own microfiber cloth in your office, or your Swiffers lying in your drawer, or even your antibacterial wipes. Mm-hmm. And you do a good job maintaining your office. Well, imagine somebody who doesn't do that and they're next door to you. And like you said, when the HVAC kicks in, it's going to circulate the air. It's going to go into the air intake and maybe even transfer some of their dust into your office that's nice and clean and pristine. We don't want that happening. And that's going to create a lot of sick days, unfortunately. So removing dust is huge. There are some tools that work and some that don't. We mentioned some already, the Swiffer dusters that work, the microfiber dusters that work. Let's talk a little bit more about the Swiffer dusters. What are they more good for?
I personally, so one thing I'd like to start this off saying too, like one thing that doesn't work. And it's kind of sad because I always, when I watch television or shows as a kid, the maid always had a feather duster. So I, but thought they were really cool, but feather dusters really just kick the dust in the air, and some of the dust will just settle back onto other surfaces or blow up into your HVAC system and then blow out to another unsuspecting person to be exposed to the dust. So unfortunately, as cute as they can look sometimes, they are not very effective. However, Swiffer dusters, which I'm sure you've used or I use them at home, they really attract the dust to them.
They're really good at getting between items on your bookshelves.
And even getting up high, you can get them on poles and you can get a lot of high dusting done with those, but also microfiber cloths. I love microfiber cloths. They are such good dusters. We have a piano at our house and it just is a dust and hair. We have a dog and I love him so much, but he has so much hair and it is a dust and hair magnet. And you just run that microfiber cloth over top of the piano and pull it up and it's just all on there. And I think that's another thing. When you look at the surface of that rag or you look at the Swiffer, it should look nasty because it's gotten the dust. A lot of times with feather dusters, you dust and you're like, why does it look so clean? And it's because
unless you're dusting daily, then it could be clean.
Oh yeah, true.
That happens
but
too.
But if you're really dusting something that's dirty, you should see it. But yeah, that's true. If you're dusting daily.
If you're doing a deep clean, it should be really dirty because you've really removed a bunch of it.
But microfiber cloths are great for dusting surfaces around you. Even I think someone called these set-upons, things you set upon the shelf. It's great for those.
New term for me.
Yeah.
That makes sense. So then dust mopping, we're going to talk about floors, removing dust from floors. What are some good ways and not so good ways of removing dust from a hard surface floor or even a carpeted floor? So carpeted floor, obviously you just vacuum it, but hard surface floors, a good way to do that, or the common way to do that, is just a simple dust mop. But if you think about it,
use a broom too, but a broom doesn't really get rid of dust. It just moves it around.
And you may have buildings out there. We have a client that has dogs that visit their building frequently every week. And so there's dog hair on the hard floors and the carpet. And so on the hard floors, if we use the traditional push broom or dust mop, it would just kick the dog hair up in the air and the dander and then just fall back behind the dust mop. So what we do for our client, this was a sticking point for them because on their landing, on their stairwell, the sun shone perfectly on one part of the landing and it just showed the dust that was there when we did our initial walkthrough.
Sunlight is the truth teller.
Yeah, it revealed the secret truths of uncleanliness. And so we committed that we were going to extract the dust out of their building for them by using a HEPA filtered vacuum cleaner and a hard surface floor attachment for their real hardwood floor. And so we've done that faithfully, and there is no problem. We've had that client for over 2 years. There's been zero complaints of any dog hair, and they have them several days a week, and we don't even clean it every day. It's a 2-day-a-week account, and there's been zero complaints of dog hair on the hard floors. And so that's a very effective way. Using a HEPA filter, it filters it down to the smallest micron of chemical and gets rid of it out of your building. So that's going to create employee productivity when you're having fewer and fewer sick days. The ISSA also has a stat that workers are 2 to 8% more productive in a clean environment.
I feel like that stat is small because I feel like I am about 70% more productive in a clean environment. I don't feel like my mind works right if I'm in a dirty environment. I want it to be clean. So
yeah, I can imagine that having a well-organized and clean environment, you're going to be more productive. All right, number 3, having a well-maintained and clean office will extend the lifespan of surfaces in your building. One particular area are floors, the surfaces in your building that if they're maintained well, they're going to last longer. And that's floors. There's all kinds of floor surfaces. The main one that we think of is carpet. Yeah.
I mean, if you're not getting your carpets cleaned, they can, obviously build up with dirt and grime and disgustingness, but stains can just pile on top of stains. And you might feel like it's not worth it. I just need to replace it. Whereas a good carpet cleaning might really be all you need.
Another surface that is easily damaged with lack of cleaning are your hard floor surfaces. And some of the older hard floor surfaces, you think of your VCT or vinyl composite tile. That's going to be in some of your medical buildings, hospitals, and different school buildings. Your grocery stores are going to have VCT, and that's heavily maintained. High maintenance. Thank you. Surface. And so you're going to need to buff it regularly. You're going to need to extract the dirt off of that regularly.
Needs to be stripped and waxed on a regular, at least a yearly basis.
Auto scrubbing it is going to be the best way to remove, way better than mopping. And so that's a high maintenance floor. And so you need to do that or to maintain the life of that. Another surface that's more popular, polished concrete and terrazzo are more popular now, especially the polished concrete. You're finding that more and more in more modern buildings. And so that could be easily maintained through regular auto scrubbing and mopping. But I've seen, especially we live in the north, and we're going to talk about salt in a second, but I've seen concrete floors break down at the entry point when there's salt coming in. So it's really important to have your carpet runners, your matting at the entrances. That's going to account for removing 86% of the dust and dirt that comes into your building. It's going to be trapped in those entry mats. So it's important to have that be well maintained. Now, on the topic of salt.
I feel like salt is our enemy. I mean, we need salt.
It's important.
It's important. We need it. So I guess safety, you could call it kind of like a frenemy. It's a friend, but it's a love-hate. Yeah.
We've often seen this where you have a manager or an office worker who just takes salt and you want to make sure no one's going to fall. So you just dump it out. You put a whole bag of salt on your entrance.
Yeah.
Well, that is a problem with your building because a lot of times your entry doors are oftentimes made out of steel and those are going to rust if you have piles of salt up against them. And so be careful with your salt. Don't oversalt. We did maintenance of a retail store floor for a few years, and it just seemed like the manager would take a bag of salt and walk down the aisle where the drinks are and just start salting the aisles.
Salt for everyone.
They were salted up against the edges, just several inches thick. And so that also is going to create a salt haze when it gets in contact with water.
Yeah.
And you don't want that. So it's hard to remove. So salt is important. Also, stainless steel is another surface where it's easy to have a lack of maintenance on that surface. So you think of your water fountains and your sinks and a kitchenette.
Right. Doors of refrigerators or things like that might be
stainless steel appliances.
Break room.
Your faucet handles, which are maybe chrome or nickel plated. So one of the chemicals, let's talk about a wrong chemical to use. It's in the green bottle at your big box stores, and it's going to be very effective getting rid of calcium, lime, and rust. We won't give the name of the product, but it's good at removing that particular.
It does a great job.
It's good at removing that mineral deposit,
Right.
but it's going to be pretty harsh. It's going to start etching the surface of those metals within about 30 seconds if you don't rinse it off.
So important. Yeah.
So a company that's local to Indianapolis is Barkeeper's Friend.
Yeah.
They're headquartered here, and they make a good cleaning product that is very safe but effective against calcium, lime, and rust. So we recommend using that.
Yeah. And I think an important aspect too is, yes, you might want to use the green bottle, but any kind of product, your cleaners need to know and be trained to not leave that product sitting on your stainless steel or your chrome or your nickel plated, anything like that, on the faucets, on the handles. Because if it's left and not wiped away or rinsed if it needs it, then it will begin to etch into the surface of the faucets, the handles, things like that.
And just as we talked about microfiber cloths, removing different chemicals that we use, we also need to think about what are we using to remove? What types of scrubber pads and scour pads are we using? Because we've seen frequently the green scouring pad, that is going to etch your stainless steel.
Right.
So we only use and train our people to only use the blue scratch-free pads.
Yeah.
And don't clean stainless steel in a circular motion, only straight forward and straight back. And
That's a big one because I think we've all walked in and seen a refrigerator door
Swirl
with
marks.
big swirls all over it.
They're waxing on and waxing off. They're practicing.
Wax off.
All right, so final thoughts. We've discussed the idea on this podcast that while anyone can clean, why not save yourself some money in the long run by hiring a company who are then responsible for properly taking care of the surfaces in your building? It's going to do some things. It's going to boost employee productivity.
And it's going to create a healthy and hygienic space for your employees to work in. And we know that it's important. You shouldn't worry about whether your company is clean. You are there to do work, and that should be what's on your mind when you enter that building.
And also having an idea of what your visitors see when they come into your building. There's a stat that says 96% of visitors that come into your restroom, if they find that it's dirty, 96% of them are not going to return to your building. And that's
staggering.
That's a staggering fact. So we don't want that to happen. All right. If you like what you're hearing, leave us a review wherever you're listening to this podcast, whether it's on Apple, Google, or Spotify. And if you're watching this on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. If you'd like to learn more, visit our website at cleaningindy.com.
Thanks so much.
And we'll see you next time.